Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the press conference for Star Wars: The Last Jedi. We're going to bring out our cast, and they are flanked by some very special guests from The Last Jedi. Please welcome them. All right, so I'm going to bring them up one by one. We're going to begin with Rian Johnson, the writer-director of The Last Jedi. Mark Hamill, you know him as Luke Skywalker. Daisy Ridley, a.k.a. Rey. Adam Driver, Kylo Ren. Oscar Isaac, Poe Dameron.
Hey guys.
John Boyega, Finn.
Hey.
Kelly Marie Tran, the new character, Rose Tico. Laura Dern, who plays Admiral Holdo.
Yeah.
Domhnall Gleeson, General Hux.
Yes.
Gwendoline Christie as Captain Phasma. And Andy Serkis as himself.
Alrighty.
Welcome to the press conference, guys. Thank you all for being here, joining together in one place to talk about this movie, which you guys have seen, but they have not, but they have a lot of questions for you. So Rian, what would you say differentiates The Last Jedi from The Force Awakens, but also The Empire Strikes Back as a second chapter in a trilogy?
So yeah, it's a second movie in a trilogy, and I think we've been kind of trained to expect it'll be a little darker, and obviously it looks a little darker. And the thing is, though, for me, I loved the tone that was established of the original films, and also that JJ captured in The Force Awakens of fun. And that's like, to me, it's a Star Wars movie. First and foremost, we were trying to make it feel like a Star Wars movie, and that means you have the intensity and you've got the opera, but it also means that it makes you come out of the theater wanting to run in your backyard, grab your spaceship toys, and make them fly around, and that's a key ingredient to it. So we're going to go to some intense places in the movie, but I hope also it's fun, it's funny. I don't know, you guys you've seen it.
For some of the cast who was in The Force Awakens, how would you say this film feels differently?
I just think the story's moving forward. I just feel like the JJ had a blueprint, a foundation in Force Awakens that was pretty good, and now it's about it was good, and now it's about moving forward with the story and just challenging the characters, and all the characters are under intense pressure, and so it's a time which everyone has their own specific reckoning, and it's all different. It's like a lot going on. I've only watched it once, and the first thing is that I want to watch it again because of the amount of information and Easter eggs in there as well.
Yeah, I think the thing as well is that with often with the second chapter in a story of three, because the first one kind of sets the tone and the world and the new characters, it introduces them. In the second one, you don't have to spend so much time doing that. You can really just delve into the story, into what's happening, like John said, to the conflict of each of the characters. I think what Ryan's done so incredibly well is that he's challenged deeply every single character, including the droids, with like the biggest challenges they've ever faced, and that's how you're able to really get to learn about them on all sides of the spectrum, from light to dark. It's like he's found a way to get to the central point of that character and try to challenge them as best as he can. I think it's really amazing what he's done.
Daisy and Adam, do you have any thoughts on how the film feels differently?
I agree with that.
Thank you.
I mean, the biggest thing for me when I read the script, because there's, even though you try and avoid what people are saying, it's hard to, and because people responded well to John and I as a team, I was a bit nervous about not being a team so much in this one. So I think for me personally, it was a challenge. The film was a challenge, and it was. I don't know what it was like for anyone else, but to be in different combinations of people. So in itself, we're already, we're in different situations. We're with different people that we are learning about. We're meeting for the first time. So yeah, felt pretty different for me.
Let's hear from the bad guys. The bad kids always sit in the back at the front. Domhnall, Gwendoline, Andy, any thoughts on just the tone, that how this movie it distinguishes itself among all the different Star Wars films?
I mean, I was blown away when I saw the movie. I just was so caught up with it. Not least because it was really intimate and very emotional, and I wasn't expecting that at all. I mean, I knew obviously that it was going to go that way, but it's very, very powerful, and it touches you. And what Ryan's done incredibly is make this dance between tonally dance, between these great kind of epic moments and hilarious antics, literally flipping on a dime and then going right into the heart of these beautiful characters and you really caring. And I think that was, for me, I think has been, that's my takeaway. It was just an extraordinary viewing.
I was delighted by the film, and what I was surprised by was that Star Wars has always been, I think the reason why it's resonated with us all so deeply is that it's our foundation story of good against evil, and where that balance is, and how we see elements of characters we've never seen before, things that can be unexpected. But there is something about this film, and I think it's because the world that we live in is a changing and evolving place, that it retains the simplicity of those elements, but it really resonates with what it is to follow your own human, dark, narcissistic tendencies, where that will take you. And I love that. And it's done so beautifully aesthetically too.
I didn't go to the screening, so...
he had a thing.
Yeah,
No, I didn't know.
I had other things
I'm
to do.
excited you're going to see it.
Any sense of just performing in it?
No, that's why I wanted to wait and see it with a huge crowd and see it the way I saw the Force Awakens, which was just with a load of people losing their minds. But then I heard these guys lost their minds, so I was kind of annoyed I didn't go.
I'd like to talk to some of the newcomers to the Star Wars universe, and that includes you, Ryan. You're the boss, but you're also the new kid in a way.
I'm like the new boyfriend at Thanksgiving dinner.
Well, from what we don't know a whole lot about Admiral Holdo, but we know she's kind of the new boss. She's a new leader in the Resistance. Is there a little bit of you in Admiral Holdo?
Oh,
Very much so.
I would be thrilled if there were. Laura Dern could represent any part of me in life. I would be thrilled. Yeah, Holdo. I mean, Laura. I've been wanting to. It's a dream to get to work with her, and the character that she plays and all of its glorious purple-haired wonder is. We were really able to dig in and do some really exciting, fun stuff. And Laura, I know that the moments on set where suddenly you would catch my eye and you would say, "This feels like we're making an independent film." Those were the moments that I was yeah, it kind of does, and I think that feels really good, and that kind of intimacy of the process, I think. I don't know, if Laura Dern's telling you that, then you may be on the right track, I guess. But yeah, I hear you. So.
Kelly and Laura, I know you're there to do a job and be professional, but is there any part of you that geeks out a little bit when you start working on a Star Wars film?
Every part.
Every part. I'm trying not to cry right now because this is so weird and different. Yeah, I feel like Ryan has said this before, but it definitely feels like you have to find a way to just do the work and kind of block everything out, but then C-3PO comes up and you're like, oh, good. So you're constantly figuring out, how can I figure out how to work in this environment? And then you're like, but also this is awesome. So it's kind of a balance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, what Ryan spoke to, that he does so beautifully, as well as Andy was describing, the intimacy of discovering each character's conflict, which is just extraordinary given the enormity of the cast, that he gave us that in the experience of the workplace. And it was shocking. And Oscar and I always talked about just how stunned we were that we were in such a massive environment and did feel like we were, making a indie movie, and you were always encouraging us to try things and explore character and explore this duality of the light and the dark within characters. The movie speaks to so beautifully, not just that they're alternative universes, but that lies within, which seems to be the place that George Lucas first started, the mythology of that, and it's just so brilliant. And a group of us sitting together watching it for the first time was amazing because it was like we were with 3,000 people. We were screaming, standing up, crying.
Domhnall, you hear that?
You missed something.
Oh, gosh.
Hope you're happy.
I want to ask Domhnall and Adam about your two characters, Hux and Kylo Ren. Had a really interesting relationship in The Force Awakens that I understand is expanded on in this movie, where Snoke sort of plays them against each other. They're allies, but not really. I wondered if you two could talk about their bond or lack thereof as we enter this film.
I think it's definitely there's a competition, and it's maybe yet to be discovered where that comes from. I mean, if anything, I think that's more of a testament to kind of what everyone has been saying of Rian's ability to not mind the character in every moment, which seems like an obvious thing, but he doesn't. So he knows that spectacle, it won't mean anything if you don't care about anything that's going on, which again seems very obvious, but I think it's a really hard thing to balance with this many moving parts in the scale of something like this. It's so I love playing those scenes, especially with Domhnall, because he's a great actor, and there's nothing is kind of taken for granted where this happens and it moves on. If anything, Rian slows the pace, and when there's not a moment that's taken for granted. It's always broken up into little pieces, and the story in our mind comes first before an explosion.
Is there like a corollary in our world to the relationship that they have?
That's dangerous water. I don't want to.
Plunge in.
No, I think the
like rival co-workers or brothers? Nobody?
Oh, I see. I don't know. I think it's funny, like there's just such a huge amount of drama going on in that group of people, but then also just a huge amount of bitchy infighting as well, which I think is really fun to see them kind of really hurt each other from the inside as well as from the outside. The united front thing is difficult for them sometimes. But it was just, I'm not good. Sorry, I think it's just a privilege to be in the film.
It's very good. I think we'll open it up then to the audience for some questions. And just raise your hand. We have some microphones that are going around, and I'll try to call on as many of you as we can get.
Wow, that's a mic.
There are lots of folks out there. Let's ask this gentleman right here with the goatee. Yeah.
My question's for Mark Hamill. With Luke training Rey in this movie, it seems like he's in the position Yoda was with Luke in The Empire Strikes Back. Is it sort of like when your parents say you'll understand when you're older? Does he finally learn some of Yoda's lessons now that he's the teacher?
Well, you're assuming that I train Rey.
Exactly.
Sneaky.
Do I?
Sneaky.
I know I have to be really careful. People say, was it difficult to pick up and wield a lightsaber again? And I go, do I pick up?
Is it difficult acting in this movie? Am
Well-
I in this movie?
I can promise you my part is twice as big as it was in Force Awakens.
What's 2 times 0?
Question there in the back.
Whoa, that's a cool track.
Thank you, Anthony. This question here is for Mr. Johnson. I'm Rich Woloski from Skywalking Through Neverland. I love you all, but this question is for Mr. Johnson. You had said that a lot of the visual cues for The Last Jedi were going to be taken from The Empire Strikes Back. What aesthetic really spoke to you about Empire, and what shot did you really want to replicate from The Empire Strikes Back?
Hit the ugly light. It's 4 a.m. This is it. You don't have to go home, but you can't
very
stay
much.
here.
Thank you. Here all week.
Well, I mean, my cinematographer, Steve Yedlin, who I've been best friends with since I was 18 years old. We met in film school. And so to be standing next to each other on a Star Wars set was pretty surreal. But I think Empire is, I think it's just the most beautiful I mean, all the films are beautiful. I think, for my just taste, I think the cinematography in Empire is the most gorgeous of the whole series. And so Steve and I looked at the lighting in that it's also kind of the most, it's pretty daring in terms of how dark they were willing to go with some of the, literally dark, and how gorgeous they went with some of the choices they made with the shaping of the lighting. But then in terms of like an actual visual aesthetic, I made a choice very early on that I thought, well, I can either try and kind of copy my idea of what the original movies did, which was much more of kind of a formal, the camera didn't move a ton, and it was much more of kind of the, a much more formal type visual aesthetic. Or I realized, you know, we're going to take visual cues lighting-wise and design-wise from, you know, the previous movies, but I need to just shoot this movie the way that I would shoot a movie, because at the end of the day, if I'm not engaged with it and I'm not trying to tell the story the way that really makes me excited, then it's not going to be up there on the screen. So I kind of cut myself from loose camera movement-wise and shot-wise from trying to imitate the past, and just tried to tell the story as excitingly, is that a word, as I could up on the screen. Yeah. Yeah.
So there are way more female characters in this movie, certainly than the first 3 movies. That's going to mean a lot to little girls. I want to know what it means to you guys.
I think, like, as a girl growing up in London, obviously I knew there was a disparity in films, but I wasn't so aware of it. Like, growing up in a liberal household, I was never really made to feel any one way. So when I, when I got involved, I didn't really, like, I knew it was a big deal, but the response was so beyond anything I could have imagined that I'm still like, it was only afterwards that I was like, oh yeah. And it's not like I ever took it for granted or anything, but it was just so monumental, the response and how people felt about it. And obviously that's a testament to Kathy, JJ, Michael, Larry, everyone who created the characters in the beginning. And I think what's great about everyone is it's not like she's a girl, this is a guy, this is anything. It's just great characters that happily are falling into broader categories now. So I'm thrilled. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it feels like both an honor and a responsibility at the same time. I feel like from the beginning, when I initially found out I got this role, I just felt like I wanted to do the whole thing justice. And I'm so excited that, guys, the girls in this movie kick some butt. Every single one is so good, and I can't wait for everyone to see it. Yeah.
And I just want to pay tribute to Rian for being one of the most brilliantly subversive filmmakers I've ever been able to bear witness to. And in the case of the look of my character, I was moved by the fact that he really wanted her strength to first lead with a very deep femininity, and to see a powerful female character also be feminine is something that moves away from a stereotype that's sometimes perceived in strong female characters must be like the boys. I thought that was a really interesting choice to get to witness.
I was so delighted. I wasn't cast in the first Star Wars film yet when I heard about the casting. And I was utterly delighted to see that there was a more representative selection of actors that were going to be in these incredible Star Wars films. And that has continued. And you know, everything that my amazing colleagues say is absolutely right. You get to see women that are not being strong just because they're acting like men. They're doing something else. And also you're seeing a developed character, or at least a developing character, that's showing some complex character traits. And I'm just delighted about that. I'm delighted that something as legendary as Star Wars has decided to be modern and to reflect our society more as it is.
Okay, yes, right here in the front.
This question goes out to Daisy, Adam, John, and Oscar. Last Force Awakens, you were the new kids on the block. You had Carrie, Harrison, and Mark to set the tone and lead the way for you to step into these roles. you guys are now leading the way for a next generation of actors to come into the Star Wars world. How much did that place any kind of onus on you and any sense of responsibility in addition to that inherent to your performances?
No, I don't think so. In that, the lesson that I learned from the first one from Mark, Carey, and Harrison is the not so much telling you, and other people that I've worked with, is not telling you what your experience is going to be, because we're all different and we see the world differently. And that's kind of an obvious thing, but kind of similar to almost the question before. It's hard to impose an idea on someone that you kind of don't know. I think it's everyone's relationship to certainly within them, I would imagine, is different, and that's kind of for them to discover. And it's almost more generous to, give someone space to make it personal to them. I'm not really sure what that means, but more that they weren't kind of let me tell you what it's going to be like, because no one really knows. And I think that they would say, even for them coming back to the movies, to this movie after so many years, that I think maybe Mark can speak better to this, that even they have to figure out what it means to them. So I think that's they're kind of lead by example people. That's kind of what I'm avoiding saying, because it's so cliched, but it's more powerful, I guess, when you see it in action. So I think that none of us took it upon ourselves to tell people how it was going to be for them, because we're not them. I don't know that affected our performances in any way. I think everyone was just as equally terrified to figure out what we were doing, and make sure we were looking at space and.
Any others? Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Look at somebody in the back there. Yeah, gentleman with his hand up.
The question is George made the original trilogy very much, we watched it through the eyes of R2-D2 and C-3PO, through the droids. And obviously here we've got R2 and 3PO and BB-8 and BB-9E. So do we continue to see the story through the eyes of the droids, or are they just passengers on this adventure?
It's different, and it was different in The Force Awakens. It's different in this also. We don't quite have so much the hidden fortress kind of worm's eye view of the story that we started with in those movies. And with this, different story, had different needs, and so we are much more kind of with our leads the whole time.
I'll just quickly add, what I think is amazing about the film is that every character, I don't have a big film knowledge or anything, so I'm not like, oh, this is, so I never understood the structure of what the Star Wars was and what anyone was trying to fulfill. So just as me watching it, I think you really follow the story because you're with every character. Like everything you need to see is happening on screen. You're not seeing things happen off screen that have happened off screen. So people are asking questions on screen, they're getting answers on screen, they're having their adventure on screen. So you're with everyone every step of the way. So how the story's unfolding. And I think it makes for compassionate viewing, because you're really understanding both sides, why people are doing the things they're doing and how it's being fed from everywhere, and how things collide, and the consequences of people's actions, how they're directly affecting other people.
All right, we'll take another question. There in the back, the woman had her hand up. Right there. Yes, you.
Hi, I'm Kathy with Bell and Mommy, and I am a huge Star Wars fan, and I believe every movie we walk away learning something. And in this particular one, what is it that we will be walking away learning?
Everyone's looking at me.
Again, I think that, I think that's a personal kind of thing. For probably some, it will be nothing. For others.
On the poster. Words are delicious.
I've heard this said, and it's the best way that I understand how seeing a movie in a dark room with people who are total strangers kind of works, whether that be a play or a movie, is that no one lives in the theater. Everyone has lives outside. Well, I mean, hopefully, and then there's a kind of collective intelligence that happens in the room. And what is rewarding about it is realizing that you all are having a different experience, but at the same time, the same experience.
Not so much a moral of the story, but Ryan, one of the things that you and I have talked about is that a theme that's throughout the movie, all the different storylines, is the perils of meeting your hero and living up to expectations. Is that one thing that maybe connects to her?
That's definitely one of the things, yeah, in it. I mean, it's, you know, I think these movies to some extent are always about, I don't know, to really boil it down, it's, you know, if you look back at Lucas kind of, you know, famously drawing from the hero's journey myth that Joseph Campbell wrote about. And the hero's journey is not about becoming a hero, it's not about becoming Hercules, it's about really adolescence. It's about the transition from childhood into adulthood and finding your place in the world. And you have these new powers that you're feeling inside yourself for the first time. You don't know what to do with them. You don't know who you're going to get help from, who's going to be unreliable, who's not. Navigating those very tricky waters that we all have to navigate. That's why it's so universal. So part of that is you know, your relationship to heroes and people you thought were your heroes, people you don't expect who become your heroes. And that's definitely something that plays out in this film.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Mark? Having played the young farm boy who becomes a hero and now returned to that character all these years later, what journey, without obviously giving it away, but what arc is left for a guy who's been through what Luke Skywalker has been through?
I don't think any line in the script epitomized my reaction more than this is not going to go the way you think. And Rian pushed me out of my comfort zone as if I weren't as intimidated and terrified to begin with. But I'm grateful because you have to trust someone, and he was the only Obi-Wan available to me, not only in my choices as an actor, but my choices in sockwear.
Oh,
because,
up.
Well, I was so embarrassed. I looked at my drab black socks and I said, "Curse you, Rian Johnson. I'll get my revenge."
You have learned well, young
You have a really
Padawan.
nice blue sweater, though.
Oh, thanks.
Well, not on right now.
Oh, okay. It's all on loan. It's going back Monday.
All right, let's take another question.
Hi there. Hi. So Laura mentioned this a bit, talking about that you felt it was more of a kind of an indie film sort of feel. And there's been a lot of questions. I'm just going to throw this to anyone. There's been a lot of conversation and questions about how this is like the other movies. What I want to know is, how is it for you? How is it different than any of the other movies?
It's longer.
Not much longer, not much longer.
I'm not asking for spoilers or anything, but just how did it feel different?
As an actor, I would much more easily draw comparison of similarity, because like, I mean, I'm sort of just speaking for me that I was like real new to this all, and it was first film and all that sort of stuff. And I've done smaller films now this year, and I'm like, genuinely, it feels the same. Like, the sets tend to be smaller. We're shot in Prague instead of London. But, like, it's a small, not a small feeling, but it's like that family thing. So going into something could have been really scary, and being surrounded by people that make you feel really comfortable, for me, is like the only thing you can ask for, because you can only do what you can do. But if you're in a really safe environment, then you're able to do more. And coming back, like, it really felt... It was different, obviously, in ways, because the story is different. The characters are being challenged in different ways, but the crew was similar. Rian, I think it says a lot about Rian and our first Jamie, actually. Like, how a set is run is so incredibly important. And what JJ and Tommy did first time around, Rian and Jamie did this time, it's just a really happy set that everyone feels, I think, heard and respected. And so just like in an acting sense, taking everything away, I think the same feeling was captured of love and of everyone trying to work together to make this thing that hopefully other people will love. So I think, to me, like in a more an emotional way, I think it did feel more similar than different.
Fantastic, thank you.
Hi, I'm Juan Fernandez from Nuevo Dia, Puerto Rico. I wanted to ask the director, to see you at the celebration and all the things that you participated, to see that you're a fan. So I wanted to know, at what moment as a filmmaker, whether it was in the screenwriting process or shooting something, did you feel a transition from fan or felt ownership as a filmmaker of the Star Wars movie that you were making?
Oh, I keep waiting for that moment to happen. Even standing up here, I see the big Star Wars behind me, and I'm like, oh, do I belong under this? Yeah, it feels very, there's no like eureka moment where it's like, now I'm doing it. You're always riding that line between feeling like you're a fan who snuck in the back gate and is getting away with something, which I think is probably a good thing. I'm actually curious, I'd be curious to hear John, just because you're the biggest fan I know in the world.
I'm still trying to get over it, I can't lie. Because I think what we forget is that when we filmed Force Awakens, it was about 2 years between then, before we started on Last Jedi, and we went off, obviously, to do other stuff. And then when you come back, it just feels like you're back in school, you know? And it's fun. Every day was a new set. The practical effects, I think, like doubled on this movie. The sets were bigger, and it's always exciting and amazing. But as everybody has said, you still feel an intimacy when you're doing these scenes, you know, and independent with a big budget. You know what I mean?
Big ass budget.
A big ass budget.
Anyone else for them?
I love, Oscar, how you described yesterday all of us watching the roll at the top as the lights went down.
Yeah.
And even though all of us feel giddy that we're excited about being part of this, suddenly you're an obsessed fan regardless.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
One more question. Jermaine?
Oh my God.
Hey everyone. Obviously, the death of Han Solo is a huge moment in The Force Awakens, and I'm wondering how impactful is that, without spoiling anything, to the characters who knew him in the last movie and the previous films?
I think we're just keeping it moving, to be honest with you, man. It's true. The pressure's on, man. You know, there's no time. I think that's one thing that's unique to me about watching this movie was just the commentary on war. I think there hasn't been a Star Wars movie yet that has explored war in the way The Last Jedi does. It's very messy. The categorizing of good and evil is all mixed together. So you know, in terms of Han, there's no, you know, I'm sure we all feel sentimental if someone wants to sit Finn down or sit Rey down, but Rey's off training, she's got stuff to do. I got a back injury, I got stuff to do. I can't think about Han at the moment. He done. So
I think it's reverberating, but he's right. You know, it's a dire situation. It's critical. The resistance is on its last legs. You know, they're trying to survive. First Order's right on top of us. You know, everything is like war, where you got to just keep moving to try to survive. And so you feel, I think, the momentum of everything that happened in The Force Awakens just pushing and getting to a critical mass in this film.
I will interject there, though, and I think this is the beauty of having storylines that are sort of happening in tandem and affecting each other. Because I would say that Rey, at least, is very much affected by it, and I think, like in the. What did I say? What did I do? In the first, like, Rey as a character has been alone for a really long time, and she's really open to like love and friendship. So Finn and BB-8 come along, and it's like this amazing adventure. And then Han, like without trying to, she seeks something from him because there's an intimacy and there's a sort of figure of something she's never dreamed of for her that gets, you know, snatched away, and she's understanding. Everything's new to her, so she's understanding things in a different way. And luckily for me, because I was trying to get to grips with everything going on, and then Rey's trying to get to grips with everything going on. So for Rey, at least, there is some time. Everything's moving forward, but she has some time to ask questions and wonder what it is that leads people to, would have led someone to do something like that, and also how that directly affects the world around her, because, and then she, she's worried about Finn at home, so I would say she's maybe a little more affected, at least emotionally on screen, than the others.
I just want to say one thing, going back to one of the things about the question about, the strong women in it, because as a guy, I'd like to say that for me, the most formative people in my life have been women. And so that has shaped my destiny so much. And so to see that reflected in the film is really, really a beautiful thing. And so, it is more true to real life and what's happening now, but what's always happened, which is, they're the ones, that shape you.
Leading the way.
Yeah.
Well, speaking as the leader of the First Order, I have to say that Snoke is very unimpressed with the fact that there is such a huge female force that seems to be growing in the universe. Deeply threatening, it's deeply undermining, it's got to be stopped, it absolutely cannot go on. And this we see, without giving too much away, a little snatch of in this movie.
Snoke explaining. I'm going to wrap up the press conference. Going back to Jenna's great question about women in this film and female characters in Star Wars in general. For a long time when I was growing up, there was really only one character, and that was Princess Leia, now General Leia. And of course, Carrie Fisher isn't here with us today, except probably in spirit, giving everyone the finger from back there. But I wanted to ask the women in this film about the impact that Princess Leia had on generations of young girls who were watching these movies, even though there wasn't a whole lot of variety for them. I think this is a character that spoke to them, and Gwendoline, speaking as one of the idols of the bad girls, as Captain Phasma. What role did Leia play in your life as a young Star Wars fan?
Well, she was very significant because I was first shown A New Hope when I was 6, and I remember thinking, wow, that character's really different. I watched TV and film obsessively from such a young age, but it stayed with me throughout my formative years of, she's really interesting, she's really smart, she's really funny, she's courageous, she's bold, she doesn't care what people think, and she isn't prepared to be told what to do. And she doesn't look the same as a sort of homogenized presentation of a woman that we had been used to seeing. So that was really instrumental to me as someone that didn't feel like they fitted that homogenized view of what a woman was supposed to be, that there was inspiration there, that you could be an individual and celebrate yourself and be successful without giving yourself over, without necessarily making some sort of terrible, huge compromise. So it was a big inspiration for me. And to play a character as well from what we've seen in The Force Awakens, I was very excited when I was shown just the basic element of the costume. And here we were seeing a character whereby a woman her femininity was not delineated in terms of the shape of her body, in terms of her physical attractiveness, those elements, that weird random group of elements which we're born with. It's some kind of odd lottery and then we're judged on in society. And I was just delighted to be able to have that opportunity.
Any other thoughts?
Beautiful.
Laura, how about you? Do you have any thoughts on the impact of Carrie Fisher and Princess Leia in pop culture in general?
Well, endless thoughts, and also a profound impact that she made on me as a girl. I mean, spoken so beautifully by Gwen, so I'll just speak to this present experience to say that as we always had with Carrie, not just Leia, her wisdom, and people speak about people who are brave or fearless, but beyond that, I've known, luckily, a few people that would hold those descriptions, but not that they would be without shame. And that's what moved me the most about the icon she gave us, but also what she gave us individually and personally, which is to carry who she was so directly and to be without shame and to share her story and to expect nothing less from any of us. And the privilege of watching how Rian has so beautifully captured all of that and her grace and this amazing, beautiful, pure performance. But also, I think she found an equal irreverent subversive, and they had this dance that gives us this performance that I was just so moved by.
Well, how about Daisy and Kelly? Any thoughts on the legacy of Leia and Carrie?
I don't think I can really follow that, except to just say if Carrie's daughter Billy is, I think, all of those qualities. She's smart and funny and shameless and
Always
wonderful. And I think if Carrie bringing up a daughter, obviously with Brian, bringing up a daughter who is all of those qualities and then some in this world, if that's what she did, you know, just her being her, I think it speaks volumes to what she did as her in the spotlight and also her as Leia.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that was said. I think that something about Carrie that I really look up to is, and something I didn't realize until recently, was just how much courage it takes to truly be yourself when you're on a public platform or when possibly a lot of people will be looking at you. And she was so unapologetic and so openly herself, and that is something that I am really trying to do, and it's hard. And just like Daisy said, like Laura said, like Gwendoline said, I think that she will always be an icon as Leia, but also as Carrie. What an example, you know? And I am so fortunate to have met her, and I think that she will really live on forever.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for all the wonderful questions, for the audience. The cast of Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and we'll see the movie very soon.
Very soon.
Very soon. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.